Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to shows online at wcbe.org. I'm John DeSando.
I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
This is Cinema Classics.
Was last time I checked.
How about a true classic?
Okay.
How about one about 50, how many years old?
30.
30 years old.
30 years old.
Goodfellas.
How
You've
about...
talked about this now and then.
Yeah, you know, I don't think we've ever done a show.
No, we haven't done a show, but you have in your private life. You will talk about it.
Oh my
regularly.
God, I mean, come on. This movie was one of the formative movies of my life. I remember seeing this movie as a young, I was probably in my early 20s. And, you know, I even though I was an acknowledged movie fan, a movie buff back then even, I still didn't quite get Scorsese's place in Hollywood history. I didn't get, or even just in cinematic history. And I also didn't get his oeuvre yet. You know, I hadn't quite dove into that. But I remember seeing this with a bunch of my friends, and sort of the overall lasting effect of it was a sort of jaw-dropping. Like, I knew, even as a young, ignorant kid, that I had just seen something that I had never seen before. I saw something that made me look at movies differently.
What was it?
Well, it was, number one, it was the energy of the piece, right?
I think you're right.
This movie comes banging out of the gate. Guns a firing, like, you know, and you know, they said, I think there are stories about the opening scene is of Henry Hill and Liotta and the gang, and they're driving, and you hear the guy in the trunk, right? And they pull over, they open the trunk, and then they just unceremoniously stab him with a butcher knife. It's a really brutal beginning.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, it opens with that line. I can hear it, you know. My whole life, I always wanted to be a gangster, and then kick in Tony Bennett, and there you got it all. You've got the whole movie.
And don't you think that sets the tone, that energetic tone that you're talking about for the whole film, his wonder at this life, even though in the arc of the film, it's not going to turn out well. It's not meant to turn out well, but during that time, particularly the first part of it, in his voiceover, Ray Liotta's voiceover, is one of adulation for everybody he's involved with.
Right, it was this, you know, and the movie does such a wonderful job using that, Scorsese using that style, his sort of heightened romantic style to communicate the allure of the lifestyle, right? The suits, the hair, the cars, the swagger, right? And then he uses that same style. It starts to get a little more staccato, a little more jagged. He uses the same style to communicate the decay and the paranoia. And, you know, at any moment you could turn the corner and your closest friend might throw a piano wire around your neck and plunge a screwdriver into the base of your skull.
Well, I think one of the great surprises of the movie was when Joe Pesci's Tommy DeVito is going to be made.
Yeah.
This is just wonderful celebration. One of them, and they even De Niro's character hasn't been made.
Right. Well, he can't be made because he's half Irish.
That's right. So it's an extraordinary thing to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes to the ceremony, they blow him away.
Right. They blow him away because of he did something he wasn't supposed to do. So, you know, I will say one of the other things that came out of that movie, and I've watched this movie so many. When I was in college, my roommates and I used to wake up on Saturday morning, and we just pop Goodfellas in. We'd just play scenes. We didn't necessarily watch the whole movie. We'd play scenes. That's how this movie's put together in a way that you can watch it in a narrative fashion, but it's always you know, straight through. But there are these beautiful standalone scenes, and the way Scorsese has put the movie together, it's that they all add up to this incredible, this wondrous sort of tapestry.
And the acting, Lorraine Bracco, who goes to take that into the TV program,
The Sopranos.
Yeah, The Sopranos. I mean, you've got so much depth.
Yeah, let me ask you something. This is interesting to me because people will always say, I hear people in casual conversations oftentimes talk about, oh, see, another gangster movie or another, and there are so many of them, and I really defy people to kind of name 5 great gangster movies, and I think there might only be 5.
Yeah, sure.
And the 2 that are at the top.
Yeah.
Are The Godfather
Sure.
and Goodfellas.
Yeah.
And how just amazingly different they are. How do you characterize the difference between these two?
I think the similarity between the two is that they are about family. So you don't have to be a gangster to identify with the intricacies of relationships in families. And when you look at what Scorsese went through in his youth and the families he saw on the streets, then you can see this as just a beautiful evocation of the love of the idea of family and the problems inherent in that. And particularly when you lay that over with a kind of code of conduct that has an extreme ending if you don't observe it, if you don't honor it.
Right. So, 30 years ago, what's really what has been most consequential about Goodfellas and its reception and its lasting contributions to American culture was that this is the movie that made Scorsese. In other words, he is now a made Hollywood man. For years, he worked on the outskirts, the fringes of Hollywood, occasionally taking a job like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, The Color of Money, working within the system. But for the most part, this is a New York independent filmmaker.
Good.
And prior to this, nobody was paying attention to movies like After Hours. Last Temptation of Christ got a lot of bad press, negative publicity. But Raging Bull was even a commercial flop at the time. He was a guy that was operating outside of that. When this movie hit so hard culturally, it had such an impact that almost immediately, his entire filmography prior to this had been reevaluated. He was dubbed the master of cinema, the genius of American cinema. And they were right. All those movies prior to this movie, one way or another, are great. And now we got the made Scorsese.
And besides all the talent that you have expressed about him, the one that so hits me is his ability to work with supremely good actors. And how do you take a De Niro and you keep him in his role in this film, a little bit kind of just held in just a bit.
Right.
And then you let
Liotta take it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, how I could feel.
Say that again.
Yeah. In this, so what I like so much about him as a director is that I can see his influence on his actors, many of whom could go over the top at the drop of a hat. So you can take DeVito in this role over the top, but you could take Sorvino.
De Niro.
Yeah. You can take De Niro, who could go over the top at the drop of a hat, he kind of keeps him in to this role to let Liotta take the major role.
Exactly.
And then you take Paul Sorvino, and you take this big guy, and you make him so low under the radar as a character. He's more menacing than anybody else in the film.
Right. It's beautiful. It's certainly one of the great movies ever made. There's a book about it right now, Made Men by Glenn Kenny.
Oh.
We need to read that too. Now
Yeah.
see, we're reading books all like crazy. Anyway, Goodfellas, 30 years.
Wow.